Welcome back to another episode of the Savvy Founder podcast. Have you been going back and forth on making a decision or questioning yourself after you've made a decision? If you've been spending time on this, then this episode is for you. And my goal with this episode is to highlight how going back and forth on making a decision or questioning yourself after you've made a decision actually has a much larger impact on you than just that initial decision that is in front of you. Today, I was on a live call, and something that actually came up in the call today was how do you go about protecting your time? And one of the things that came up in that conversation was all about saying no to things that aren't a match to whatever it is that you are creating. And it's something that we see, I think, a lot, especially because it tends to come up as a people pleasing quality that people have, which is struggling to say no. And it bridges really well into this conversation about decisiveness, about making decisions. Whenever we are saying yes to something, by default, we are saying no to something else. So if you find yourself in this habit of habitually saying yes to things that you already know you really should say no to, but maybe you just don't want to because you want to be nice or you just don't want to deal with potential conflict, you have to understand that you are really doing yourself a massive disservice because what you're really doing is saying no to something that could be better for you. Just given the nature of time is not infinite. We all have a finite amount of time. So whenever we are committing to one thing and not committing to another, then you are automatically choosing where to focus your time, which is the limited resource that we all are coming up against. And it's something that's really important when we start talking about this conversation of decisiveness. I have always been someone that really enjoys the process of researching, of weighing the options. Oh, okay, I like this, I don't like this, pros and cons list, that type of thing. But if I'm being really honest, even though I really enjoy that research phase, when it comes to the conversation of leveraging time and talking about how do we make decisions, it doesn't really help in the process. So right now I have an infant. So I definitely do not have as much free time as I used to have. And something that I realized is that when we are spending a lot of time trying to make a decision or waiting to make our decision happen, we're just entering the space where we are allowing our time to just freely go by when really we could be using that to be more impactful. When you know there is something that you should be doing and you are just delaying because it doesn't feel exactly right, or you're just not completely sure yet, or yes, you are going to do it, but the conditions need to just be a little bit more optimal. What we're really doing is we are wasting our time. And it's interesting because a lot of times when people talk about time, they tend to talk about how limited their time is. Oh, I don't have enough time. I want to value my time. But we have to ask ourselves, are we actually valuing our own time? And chances are, if you've been in this cycle of sometimes you make decisions and then you kind of go back and forth and you spend this time in limbo land, that it's just another way that you're not exactly valuing your time that you have. But the good news is that this is something that you can change and you can start to do that from this point going forward. Now, obviously, there are times when maybe you've made a decision and there are true reasons behind why it would be delayed to start. So, obviously, use your discernment around this topic. But I'm specifically talking about when you are sitting on the fence, when you are in between, or you are just allowing time to go by in hopes that time will give you clarity. And in my experience, time very rarely gives you clarity, but action does. Which is why when you're delaying to make a decision, you are really delaying your process, the timeline that you have to actually get the clarity that you need. I have learned so much more by doing than I ever had in trying to go back and forth and deciding whether or not it would be good for me. I sometimes talk about this. It's almost a pet peeve of mine, I feel like at this point, where if you've ever been trying to start something new, I feel like I hear this all the time when it comes to, oh, I'm going to start working out, or I'm going to change the way I'm eating, or insert something to better yourself. And people will say things like, I'm going to wait until Monday, or I'm going to wait until the beginning of the month. And my thought has always been, but if it's really important for you, then why are you delaying? Why are you not doing it now? There's no specific significance that Monday has. And in my experience, when I have waited to start something versus me just starting and deciding, putting that stake in the ground where I'm at and saying, yes, from this point on, this is exactly what I'm going to do. When I've done that, just put that stake in the ground, I have one, been more consistent than ever before. And I got into action sooner, which made it easier to continue going. The time that I had in the past, because this was years ago, when I would say, same thing. Let's wait until Monday. Let's wait until the next beginning of the quarter, the beginning of the month. And really what was happening is I was just giving myself time to either come up with excuses or to make it more complicated. I was creating so much space for myself to overthink. And at the end of the day, none of those things were truly serving me. And so if you've been in this place, I know for a fact that it typically is not serving you unless there's really a true reason. And you would know this as to why it would make sense to wait. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, there's not really a strong reason. It's just something that we're doing. And it's another way that we truly are not valuing our own time. And I think that if I'm leaning into, okay, why is it that this happens? What's really coming up when people are pushing off decisions? For me, it's shown up a couple different ways. And I think this will probably resonate with you. Sometimes it's just not feeling prepared. It means that I'm wanting to get it right, but in reality, if I just did it, just decided, just took the action, it would work out all the same, if not better. There is a cost to waiting, right? I think sometimes we think of it as, oh, we have time to make a decision, but the truth is, say you started today, whatever it is that you were looking at doing, and you didn't wait for weeks to pass to try and have it be in whatever perfect timing. In that time between now and the time that you would normally have delayed starting, you would then have the experience of doing it for weeks. Weeks. That's actual valuable experience to gain. And it would put you so much farther ahead, which is a reason why when we're delaying, it is such a disservice to ourselves because you're not gaining the experience that you need to gain to really get where you want to go in that time. And you're not valuing your time. So it's almost a double whammy on us. But I think something that happens when we are in that phase of waiting is it feels really safe. It feels really cushy to wait and hold off. And we get to kind of just see and come up with other things. And this leads into a conversation around self-trust because when we are not sure that we can really trust ourselves, I think of it like this. When I finally decide, hey, I want to place this order, say on Amazon, for example, I know without a shadow of a doubt that that package is going to arrive at my house in a matter of either same day, couple days, whatever timeline, right? I know that it's coming. I don't have to keep checking, oh my gosh, I know that it's coming. And I think that we need to get that level of certainty with ourselves in what we say that we're going to do. But the thing is, when we are in this process of questioning, wavering back and forth, we are creating this foundation within ourselves that makes it more difficult for us to trust ourselves because you don't know for certain then when you place your order that it's coming to your house. You're like, well, maybe it is, but maybe that order got completely sidetracked and I won't see it again for until Monday. Maybe this Monday, maybe next Monday. I know I've definitely experienced seasons where I just didn't trust myself. And the way that it shows up, or the way that it showed up for me, for example, let's just talk about social media content. What I would do is something like this. I would write out my caption. I would read it. I would rewrite it. I would criticize it. And then I would start to question myself, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? Ooh, this might be too strong of an opinion to post. And then I would end up not even posting it. Or it could show up like this: planning a launch, having all the pieces in place, going through all the details. What is it that I would need? And in the middle of the launch, maybe people aren't signing up as quickly as I expected or as you expected. And then you start to back away and not be as fully committed to it. This is a conversation that honestly is not talked about enough, of what really happens when we are not able to fully trust ourselves. But at its core, there's so much that happens in the middle between us questioning ourselves and what ends up happening. But in essence, what's really happening there is that we are wasting our time. And your time is the most valuable thing that you have. We're often talking about how can we be more productive when it comes to specific tasks, or how can I optimize this? And I like to talk about automations and systems, right? Which is, these are things that you can do to save time and to really value your time and to leverage your time. But then in the same conversation, will see that we're then just exchanging that for us to then be just wasting time on making decisions, when we could really just be moving into the point of taking action and getting the results and being able to refine what we're doing and get that much better in that time versus just waiting. And when we're asking ourselves, how is it that we can go about achieving more? What can we do to make that next goal happen? So much of this is about stopping that cycle of self-questioning and deciding to go for it. Decide to be decisive. Decide that right now, your role is to show up 100% for where you are right now. And also understand that your 100% will look different based on where you are, what season you are in. It's not going to be the same. And this isn't about comparing your 100% to Sally's 100%. This is just about you, and you. And something that we have to remember is that when you don't decide, you are also still making a decision. And that decision has impacts as well, like I've talked about with your time, and how that really breeds this foundation for you to not trust yourself even further. When we're on the fence, do I join the program? Do I not join the program? Do I launch my offer? Do I not launch my offer? Do I revamp my program? Do I not revamp my program? And when we're trying to just create a business that can really start to support us, it's so important that, yes, build a foundation and a structure in your business that works for you, and absolutely learn the ways to leverage your time. I love to geek out on those things, but also just in our behaviors that we have in ourselves. Think about it. The last decision that you went back and forth on, how much time did you spend, or I could say waste, going back and forth? And what if you had used that time to just either do it or not do it? And if you decided that you didn't do it, because this is not about deciding to do everything, right? This is about making a decision, and that decision can easily be yes or no. But then you could have used that time for something else, but instead you just delayed making the decision that you could have made in the beginning. And each one of those decisions that you have, they have consequences, right? Whether you do it or you don't do it. Some of those decisions could be in your favor and others don't. And that's something that only you can know. There's this great quote actually by Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. And it says this: men who succeed reach decisions promptly and change them, if at all, very slowly. Men who fail reach decisions, if at all, very slowly and change them frequently and quickly. Let that sit for a second. And I want you to ask yourself, what has your relationship been to making decisions in your business? What has your relationship been to making changes in your business? This is one of the reasons why I really like to talk about how to build from a sustainable point, because yes, make decisions without wasting a lot of time, because chances are you already know what it is that you either want or should be doing. And then I like to make decisions from a place of, is this something that I can sustain? and to really commit to that process of refinement, to commit to that process of actually giving myself a chance to be better at whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think that's what this Napoleon Hill quote is really talking about. When you're the person who succeeds, make your decision and then change them, but allow yourself to sit in that place so that you can actually get better at whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's you signing up for a course, whether that's revamping your program, whatever it is. Allow that to really marinate so that the changes that you make can be really impactful versus just snap decisions, hopping from shiny object to shiny object. Say that fast 3 times. And then vice versa, it talked about how when people fail, they tend to not reach decisions at all. And I think the reason for that is because that lack of decision is still ultimately a decision. And a lot of times it's a decision that I don't think we fully weigh the impacts that it will have. In summary, delaying, in my opinion, is the ultimate display of not valuing your own time. When you wait to start something that you know that you want to or you need to do, ultimately you're just not valuing your time. And time, like I said, it's the one thing that we don't have an abundance of. So you have to ask yourself, if you're doing all these things, if you're in this stage of your business where you're really focusing on how can you really leverage your time, we can't miss this area because this area is huge. You can have all the systems, all the automations in place, but if you're sitting here wavering back and forth, that's a big deal. That's your time. And we as founders are here to create new ways of doing things, to create new pathways. And one of the most important things for you to do is to have confidence in yourself, to trust yourself enough to be decisive about what you are doing. And when you can do that, when you can fully lean into trusting yourselves, when you can build that inner rapport with you, knowing that you are going to show up for yourself, that you can make decisions, you can trust yourself to truly be the CEO and to guide your business. When we can do that, then you will truly start to see the ripple effect that you can have from just being that leader in your business. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Savvy Founder podcast. If you would like to continue this conversation, screenshot you listening to this episode and head on over to Instagram and tag me at Essentially Janae and share your favorite part. I would love to hear from you. Other than that, I'll see you next episode.